Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and this is the prince, the king himself. Look at that little face. Tatum. And we are here today to do the reader profile tag because Novel Insights tagged me, and I saw that he tagged me. And so I wanted to interact by doing the tag, and I will have some people tagged in the description below if they would like to do this as well. However, before I got started, which is why Tatum is here, though you can't really see him because he is chosen to lay down, but I wanted to, one, say happy Thanksgiving, and to two, because of the holiday of this month, this week, I wanted to do a quick piece at the start of this to in honor of that holiday, to take a quick moment to be grateful for a couple of things. The first thing that I want to say that I'm grateful for is my family and friends who are close enough to be family. You know who you are, and you changed my life and give it purpose and value, even if it is small. Also, part of that family is this boyo right here, who has been with me for 1/3 of my life. I'm so lucky to have him, even when he walks across the room and I start to get emotional because he doesn't know what to do with a lady when she's crying. You know, as you do. He is the sweetest thing, and I am so lucky to have him. I would also like to thank my other friends who have touched my heart, left their marks on me. It doesn't matter that I met you online. There are so many of you, some that are likely, there are so many of you that mean a lot to me, that probably mean more than is, reasonable to other people who don't see online relationships as valuable or real. But there are many of you, some that may not even watch this video, that may not really interact in my life anymore much, or maybe out of my life entirely now at this point. But I have called many people friends, and I still think of them very thoughtfully, very warmly from the times of friendship. And your involvement in your friendship has changed who I am, who I will become, how I see the world, and reshaped my heart and mind with the blessing of having you in it. So thank you every day for the people who have chosen continually, even if there has been like mistakes or upsets or anything. It's the patience and love and courage and willingness to be a part of my life that changes who I am, and it influences and reshapes my heart. So thank you. And I'm thankful for storytelling in every form, because it not only gives me purpose and drive and hope, and don't even think for a second that there is not hope. If you are creating things to be shown tomorrow, then it means that you believe in tomorrow. It means you have some kind of hope. Even on my darkest days, as long as I'm still thinking about the stories that I want to create tomorrow, if I have the drive to figure out how to make it or to push through to make it, then I know that I have hope for tomorrow. So it means a lot. But it also gives me ways to connect with other people, to see the things, to see what other people see, the stories, the courage, the characters, how they see things to discuss. And no matter how rocky it gets sometimes, I love discussing characters in books and stories, and have found amazing books and games and music this year and last from artists and peers making things today that are leaving behind masterpieces and windows into the soul for people in the future, including our future selves. I also want to say thank you to everybody who has followed this channel, who has watched even a single video, who is not probably watching this video because they watched a different video and decided they didn't like me, but to everybody who has given me a chance to helping build this channel, to being around to have conversations and participating at whatever extent you participate. I'm eternally grateful for the time that you give me and for being around, period. So thank you, everybody. And I would like to invite anyone who watches this to leave in the comments below anything that you are grateful for, thankful for, in the spirit of the holiday. With that said, let's jump into the stuff that, most of you will probably skip over, and then into the questions. So number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through whou, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your creativity. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out, if you submit it to the Fresh Meat feature, that first chapter, it'll be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work, because I may not be a reader. I might be a reader. This is your pitching chance. I try to get the book read as best that I can, and hopefully it tickles the right desire in people. The third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books, including the local library upon request. With that said, let's jump into this. That is one more thing that I did want to mention. It goes back to the indie authors. It's thanks to everybody who follows this channel or participates in this channel or helps this channel grow, shares this channel, that helps to share the indie books or the lesser known books or even just the book discussions period, because we need to talk about Kevin Got a Movie, but I'm really not sure how many people are aware of the book specifically. Like, I never read the book until earlier this year, and that was an incredible read for me. My Dark Vanessa is also not an unknown book, and it was a great book to read. But it's everybody being here that gives me the opportunity to share any of the lesser known books or the book discussions period. Whether we agree or not, I appreciate you being here, because we don't even have to agree. It is sharing our different opinions and different viewpoints in a non-aggressive, insulting way that lets us share those viewpoints and get to see more of the world. So part of that gratefulness is thank you for being around as I explore a lot of indie books or lesser known books, especially indie books, because I try to read a lot of indie and share a lot of indie to help sort of bring in new authors or new creators that people don't know about. So I'm going to try to look for more ways to share indie content next year. I'm not entirely sure how, so we'll see. We'll see. Because this also isn't like a channel to sell stuff. It's a channel to discuss stuff, to see what's out there, and then to have our pickles tickled in a platonic way. Anyways, let's get on to the reader profile tag. You're going to learn some stuff about me that maybe you do or don't know. I'm going to give some book recommendations eventually. But we're going to get into this. Now, the first question is, what for you makes a good book? If you are check out around this channel, if you've been to any of my reviews, you'll notice that I like some very specific things. And that is, I want to be pulled into the character, pulled into the consistency of the world. Just make me believe it. Follow your own rules. I like the settings to have characters. I like whatever is used in the story. It needs to feel grounded for me. And the characters need to show what it is that they are supposed to be. Not like me told something and then they do something else and I'm just supposed to believe what they told me and ignore the way that they act. Now, it's different if you have an unreliable narrator, but I am very specific in my rule set of like whether I enjoy a book or not. And it's, does this story follow its own logic and present a strong character? Even going back to Thursday with the character Incel, it is a very strong character and characterization, and the voice is very much there. But where it lost me is that the character stated his objective, and then that got lost in the story where you didn't actually see him pursuing it and getting pulled away from that pursuit or anything. So then it kind of just droned. So I like to see stories that commit to what the characters are trying to do, even if they get pulled away from what they're doing. And I like to just be drawn in. If you make me believe in it, you can do anything. But you've got to stay strong in that thing. I don't like stories that are affirmation. I don't like wish fulfillment stories. I don't like power fantasies. I don't like stories that are written out of spite. I don't like tragedies or things that are just negative or misanthropic. I don't like things that are just dark for the sake of dark. I do love things that explore psychology. I do love things that explore culture, and that goes for fiction and nonfiction. And I do like things that explore faith, and that goes for fiction and nonfiction, and it can be different types of faith or different ways in which faith is explored. So those are different things that make a good book. But what really makes a good book for me is the characters feel legitimate. They feel real. They believe themselves. If you look at what My Dark Vanessa had, if you look at We Need to Talk About Kevin, those books had dark subject matter, and Eva was not an enjoyable narrator, like a good person, a likable person, but she was an enjoyable narrator because of the way that she talked, her sincerity, and that is what will draw me in the most to a lot of books. But, you know, if the character is kind of a self-insert asshole that everybody just orbits, probably not going to happen. Empress Teresa is different. I like absurdity, but but it has to still be sensical absurdity, as much as that is kind of an oxymoron. Anyway, question 2. What are you currently reading? I have 3 books that are on my currently reading, which are currently started, and it's whether or not I can focus on them enough. And one is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Tutin, and we are reading that right now on the Loin stream. I also have his 2 other books that I would like to read soon because I like his style of writing. I have Motive Black by Adam Scott Huerta, and I have The Anarchist Handbook by Michael Malice. And will I be talking about The Anarchist Handbook? Theoretically, I should be talking about it at some point. So there are some soon to be read books that I have that are like The Dark Creator slash A Dark Scientist. That's two separate books in the same series by Lauren Chambers. I read The Dark Violinist here on the channel earlier this year, and I enjoyed her style of writing. And so I look forward to getting to read those. I'm just very slow at reading. I am sorry, but those are on my Kindle. I have them ready to go. I just have not. I get through one book a week if I'm lucky. Most of the time, if I post a book review, you can be sure that I just read that book this week. Most of the time. Unless it's a really long book, like Sam Fenna's book, which took me like 3 months because it shouldn't have. It was 1,000 pages, and if I get through 300 to 400 words in like a week, I should have gotten through that in 2 or 3 weeks, right? It takes longer, okay? It just... I also have Queen of the Ghouls by Michael Lewis Jr. that I would like to get through. A Ribbon of Sand by Michael Shannon, which since I got that last Christmas, because it was read for the Fresh Meat feature last Christmas, I would like to get to that at the end of this year, like specifically because I have held onto it for a literal year. And I've wanted to read it. And I have The Cursed Six, Book 1, Virgil by Miguel Torres Jr., which was submitted here by the author. And he has asked that I talk about it on the channel. So those are on my to be read. I don't think I'll get to all of them, obviously, because that's 5 books for the remainder of this year. But I am going to try to get to many of them. And I am hoping at the very least to get to Lauren Chambers' books also by January. I would also like to get to The Cold Dish because I am currently writing a Western and I would like to read some Westerns for some Western vibes to help with the setting. So Cold Dish and Lauren Chambers, I'm going to hope to put on my freaking to-read list before January. I know I want Ribbon in the Sand in December, The Cursed Six in December, Queen of the Ghouls I've had around because that was also sent to me by the author and asked to be read by the author, and so I will try to get to that as well because it has been waiting for a long time. I have a bunch of other books that have also been waiting for a long time. Specifically with fantasy, I'm sorry, it takes me some time to get through because fantasy is not my favorite genre. In fact, a lot of them read the same to me because I don't enjoy them, but I still try to read them and give different fantasies a chance to be their own thing, you know? So I do apologize. This is going to sound like a lot of excuses, so I'm very sorry. I read a lot of books to learn. Now, this is going to sound possibly a little bit awkward, and I apologize for that in advance. I read a lot of books to learn, to get new perspectives, or from suggestions, be it them being given to me by indie authors so I can give them a chance, or someone likes a book or a series and they recommend it to me. If you wonder why I don't give too many glowing reviews or do too many glowing review videos on this channel, it's partially because I don't actually read that quickly. Like I said, I do about 1 book a week, if it's a good week, if I'm not burnt out. Because I'm also, as I'm reading these books, I'm writing extensive notes, so it takes me a lot longer. And while I'm doing that, I'm also doing my day job, and I'm writing my own stuff, and I'm recording and editing all of my own videos, and I'm doing live streams and life, and it's a lot. And then I'm also reading books that are not necessarily to my taste, but I'm still giving them a chance. But that also means that I'm not necessarily going to give them a glowing review if it's not really to the thing that I like. And I'll tell you what it is. And aside from these books that I've already mentioned from this list, I do have a backlog of even more books that some of them have been sent to me by the author. Some of them have been submitted to the topics, and then many that I actually want to take a look at and haven't gotten to take a look at for multiple reasons. But I never feel like I read fast enough, and that my reading pace is just so slow that it lets everybody down who comes and they want to share what they've read or what they enjoy. And the number of times that I see authors go and say, read my book, and then in the same breath, when somebody does agree to read their book, that they're like, yeah, right, that's never going to happen because nobody ever does it. It leaves me feeling like I'm never good enough. Nobody is ever good enough. And preemptively, it's calling other people a liar when they agree to read your book. Now, this isn't at anybody specific. I've just seen it in a couple of places, and it's like, books can take time to read. I will tell you, Bodymore 1 was on NetGalley in 2021. Every so often, I still get feedback from somebody who has an ARC copy from 2021. So it just, I think I've received a couple of them this year even. So sometimes it just takes time. And I know that it sucks because I've got books out there that I would love to have people read, but sometimes it just takes time. And so I appreciate everybody's patience with me saying I'll do this and I'll do this because I have to rearrange. I sometimes when I'm reading a longer book, I have to put, or I'm struggling with reading, or I'm struggling with focus, I have to put a book down to like read a shorter book because it's already Wednesday and I need a book by Saturday. So that's sometimes how some books jump out. Sometimes I'm like on social media and one pops out and I'm like, okay, let's read that. So like I have my reading list, but it's also kind of flexible. And so I'm sorry, but also it happens. I'm sorry. Number three, what's the last book that you didn't finish and why? I think the last book that I actually didn't finish was The Wild by Kay Webster in 2022. And that was because it was abusive, incest, underage pornography, literally. Um, and I was like halfway through it, maybe. And the descriptions of the sexual stuff constantly, nonstop, was making me feel physically ill. And I was like, why am I even doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? Why am I poisoning my mind like this? So then I just went and I watched a video to see how the rest of it went. And I couldn't do it. And more often than not, when it's stuff like that, when it's erotica and never ending sex scenes, it actually makes me physically ill. I had that with the fingerling book even, and, and so I really don't enjoy those types of books. But that one was so bad. And obviously, like, and I've read romantasy and I've read sex scenes in books, but there's a difference between nonstop, unending, like moist, erotic writing and a sex scene in a book. And The Wild was just making me sick. But generally, I try not to DNF books because I want to see what the author is doing all the way through to kind of look for the threads, to look for the character, to look for the choices and the logic that's being made, at least how I see it, so then I can talk about that. So I don't really DNF books that often. What obscure books do you wish other people would read? The Origin of the Sky by Chelsea Harrington. That was a really cool, like modern written fairy tale style book. It's not a fairy tale. No, it's a fable, more like a fable. And it's not modern, but it is like Dead Earth style. It's got beautiful art that the author drew themselves, and I just can't say enough about it. The ending is beautiful. The ending it is a story about who we are, how we are made to become who we are. And for me, it was a love letter to art, to every type of art, and to humanity. And you really don't like, so many people are so cynical. I don't want to say everybody, but there is so much fiction that's like grim dark or cynical or abusive, and The Origin of the Sky is hopeful and a love letter to people, and I really loved that about it. The Woman They Could Not Silence by Kate Moore is a nonfiction about a woman who lived in the 1800s. I think it was 1850, 1860s specifically is the period. She was in Illinois, and she was institutionalized for disagreeing with her husband and then had to fight to get out of the institution, and then had to actually fight in court to be able to have her rights as a married woman, because when she was married, all of her rights were taken away, and she fought for the, in general, to institute rights for married women against their husbands. And that's just the right to, like, people have to give evidence before they institutionalize you. It was a really good book, and Elizabeth Packard is an amazing woman. Highly recommend just checking her out if you want to see a story of a strong, resilient woman who has a lot of faith, who is very smart. And also Mary Sue by George Alexopoulos. I know it's very hard to read that comic book because there's really no way to get it right now, but I do wish more people would read it. I wish that book had more of an audience, like more of a people that knew about it to help sustain that it could continually be written, because it, at the time that I got it, I don't think it had enough of an audience to justify it continuing. And obviously when stuff gets canceled, you're like, this sucks. St. Gregory by Charles Beaulier. That was something that I read last year as well. And it was about a priest or a faith a faith man that came to the New World to look for his missing friend and went into, I think it was Wisconsin, and he started seeing this little town in Wisconsin, and he started seeing these weird little devil related things, magic related things going on in the town, and the town not really helping find the missing person. And I really like that main character, Ambrose. It's not very often that I actually like a book's characters, like they're likable, because I read so many difficult fiction or fiction that's not my genre. So that book I actually really loved because I really loved Ambrose, and I really liked how that author handled faith. I also recommend the Idun trilogy by H.H. Miller. If you are somebody that kind of likes a slow burn fantasy that mixes kind of an anime vibe with a little bit of politic, it's got slice of life, it's got an action side, and it's got the politics side. You know, you got the brother and the sister who are doing two separate lives, and then they're going to be reunited in the third book. If you are looking for fantasy that is very anime, but it also is Western-y, like that's going to be your mix, because H.H. Miller also spent some years living in Japan, is American, and so you've got that influence in there. And then the last obscure book I would like to recommend is The Eye of the Universe by Matt Waterhouse. I mentioned this book a couple of weeks ago when I was playing Mouthwashing, because this is a story about a man who wakes up in a spaceship and everybody is dead. And so then he is trying to find other survivors and also try to get a message out that, you know, he is still here, but he is going through this abandoned, well, it's not abandoned, he finds corpses everywhere, and he gets his dead buddy, he puts him in a wheelchair, and he puts like a recorder thing around his neck so that he can get like sound clips responding to him when he talks to the corpse. And it's a very interesting story. I think it was very well written. We actually read it on the Loin Stream a couple of years ago. It was an indie book, and so I highly recommend it. It's even years later, I still remember some of the scenes very well, because I think it is, I don't know, it was just a very interesting and very unique read. Number 5, what's the longest book that you have ever read? First, I think it would be Amygdala by Sam Fenna, which was over 1,000 pages, earlier read this year. The second longest, I think, is Curie and Comfort by Dan Simmons, which was around 884 pages. I don't generally like long books. I don't know why it is, but they feel like a bigger commitment. And I also don't really trust authors that do long books, because I've noticed a lot of them, specifically over 500 pages, don't generally need to be that long. Now, it's not to say that longer books can't justify their length, but especially with new authors, I think many of them do not cut where they need to cut, and the books end up being longer than they need to be. And so then books that are over like 550 pages, I kind of like, I'm less likely to jump on, because they're just going to take me longer. If you could have a dinner party with 5 fictional characters, who would they be, is question 6. Obviously, Majima and Kiryu, because you're going to need somebody to talk to. You're going to get the boys. Arthur Morgan and Charles Smith from Red Dead Redemption, and Leon Kennedy. And I'm sorry, you're going to notice all of those are video game characters, because I don't read a lot of books that have likable characters in them that I'm like, I want to sit down with you. I just don't. The question number 7 is 5 books you'd want if stranded on a desert island. Now, I'm going to get creative here, you guys, as you do. Number 1, obviously, I'm going to need Amygdala by Sam Fenna, because it's thick and would keep me warm for a very long time. Also, it provides a blueprint for island society. I mean, hello, Death Hurricane. How are you doing? Number 2, I'm going to need a survival guide that's actually helpful. We would need to Amazon the best one and drone it to the island, though, because I haven't done research on the best survival guide. Number 3, I would need a psychology book about manipulating people and making everyone like me and building the best society and cults to get the Loinettes started. That is right, we are the Loinettes. Number 4, I would need the Bible of the Loin Cult for worshiping and discipline and disciplery and all of our goodies. You know, we're going to have to write the Loin Bible together, you know, from our own society-made paper. And then number 5, in true Loin Stream fashion, the final book brought to the island would have to be voted on by the Loinettes, because that's just how we do. I am a fair ruler. But in all honesty, like, I don't know if I like any book or couldn't think of any book that I would be like, I need to have this on an island because I'm likely going to die anyway. Okay? We got more important things to. I've watched Naked and Afraid. We do not have time to sit down and read the same book again and again and again if we're on an island trying to survive and get help. Number 8, one book that you could not put down. I haven't actually been in this kind of mood for a while since life is just what it is, and I take so many notes when I read that I put down books a lot. It's actually more often, I have a hard time keeping books up because sometimes I just read stuff and I'm like, I have to share this. What the frick? Or if it's like stuff like, we need to talk about Kevin, I'm like, this is so good. I need to share this. So I haven't really been sucked in a book for a long time. The last book that I actually remember, no. I used to finish manga, like, first read. I just sit down and through it, but I don't remember. It's been so long. And then when I was a teenager, I remember just consuming the first Twilight book and the second Twilight book. Just, like, stayed up all night to read them. I never went past those two, but I did stay up all night to... Look, my way of being is it's very hard for me to follow a series, especially if it takes more than 2 years to come out. Those books were coming out new when I was a teenager, so I'm like... I was done with it by the time the third book came out because it just took too long that I was, like, out of it. Yeah. Number 9. 5 books or authors that you will never read. So this one I'm going to also get a little bit creative on, since I don't really blacklist authors and I don't know too many authors in general because I give a lot of chances to different people that I've never heard about. I'm going to give 5 red flags instead that will make me not read an author. Number 1. You write fantasy, especially if it's D&D inspired, and especially if it features a paladin or a bard as the main character, and especially a cynical bard. Like, oh my gosh, I don't choose to read fantasy, and still the number of times specifically that those tropes have ended up on my plate, I'm sorry. Unless you love those tropes and you're so glad you can keep finding them, but if you're having a hard time finding other things, I'm sorry for you. If you write those things, I'm glad that you enjoy them. I'm not your reader. Just take that as I am not your reader. Number 2, the author admits that they don't read and or never talk about books that they're reading. And this includes if the author goes, I don't read anything that is contemporary or written in the last like 30 or 40 years. I only read stuff, before 1970s or whatever. If all of your references are in other mediums, like you only reference movies or you only reference games or you only reference television, and it's okay to do mixed medium references, obviously. But if you don't reference books ever, then I don't trust to read you. And I don't trust that you actually like the medium or care enough to learn how to write a good book using the form for the benefits that it has, but rather it feels like you probably chose it because you can't afford a TV, movie, or video game make. And a lot of times, I cannot tell you how many times somebody has come to me saying they don't read, they send me their book or they show their book, and they don't even know how to format paragraphs. They can't separate dialogue. They don't know that you separate a paragraph when a new person starts talking or when an action is separate from somebody else's dialogue, or that if the action is the same person as the dialogue above, unless it's completely, going somewhere new, then you keep it on the same line, because I'll be reading so many things out loud and somebody has dropped it to another line, but it is the same character as the one that was before. And so, or all one paragraph. Just the entire chapter is one paragraph. I give an excuse to translations, especially older translations, because 120 Days of Sodom was written like that because it was a translation from French and an old French book. I do not give contemporary authors that excuse. Unless it is translation, because other countries write books differently, and I give that benefit. Number 3, authors who insult all other contemporary media, especially those like theirs, just to compare themselves and say everything sucks but my stuff, read my stuff, buy my stuff. It is always a grift to me. If you cannot have a discussion about somebody else's thing, about other writing, without saying how yours is better, I'm not going to trust you. And there's a difference between you talking about your thing in a different context and us talking about a book. And instead of talking about the book, you bring up your book to say it's better than the conversation. I need an author to I need authors to engage in a conversation over somebody else's content, um, to get me to trust them that about their content, not like shoehorn their stuff into every conversation. Number 4, when authors approach me, and this has happened on more times than I can put on one hand, when they say, I know you don't like this genre, but mine will be different. Mine will change your brain chemistry. Mine will make you think. You will become a fan of this. I know you don't like this genre, but mine is different. Prepare yourself. It's probably not. And those are kind of the worst, some of the worst for me, because it usually shows that the author has a bit of an ego. And when you give your honest feedback, they're going to have a meltdown because they did not prepare themselves for the idea that their story may not be to the taste of whoever they're approaching. And there are a lot of people out there who really just want their work read so bad that they don't think about the preferences of the readers they contact and what might happen if somebody who isn't their target readership reads the book. And then they break down and send you long paragraphs of emails telling you how you got everything wrong and how you're too stupid to understand their books because you didn't like their book. Has happened on more than one occasion, especially this year. Guys, I gotta tell you, it makes people more sketchy about reading indie books. And then red flag number 5, when you say that your book is about philosophy, when you talk about the mechanics of your book, when I ask you what the book is about, you can't tell me what the book is about. And you go, it's philosophy and politics and psychology and the value of human life and suffering and pain and agony and anguish. And it's so dark because life is suffering, misanthropy, and tragedy. I'm not a fan of black pilling. I'm not a fan of misanthropy. I'm not a fan of hopelessness and tragedy and pain for the sake of pain. And I'm not a fan of this. The only thing that gives life value is suffering. Usually when somebody can't tell me what their book, on top of that, usually when somebody can't tell me what their book is about, but tells me their ideas of themes, it means they don't know what their book is about, and also that their book doesn't know what their book is about. So, that's a red flag for me. You should be able to tell me, if you understand your book, who your main character is, what they're trying to do, what's getting in their way. Now, there might be all of this other complicated stuff and all of these other themes going on in the books, but you should be able to tell me who your main character is, what they're trying to do, like what is the inciting incident. It doesn't have to be the entire thing. Like if you look at Bodymore, the main character is Joey. Book 1, what is she trying to do? She goes to Lincoln Park to pick up a car that was her friend's, and he gave a call saying the car is broken down at night in this dangerous park. She's trying to pick it up. There's a body in the car. And she doesn't know where her friend is. She's trying to find her friend before the cops do, as they say that he killed the guy in the trunk. So that's all you need to do. If you look at Boom, it's about Jan, a YouTuber in Ukraine who gets accosted by some sponsors from the United States to build bigger bombs for his YouTube channel that get Ukraine in trouble with Russia. You look at Bodymore Zero, it's about Ralph, who is the brother to Casey, and they're part of a band, and Casey gets stabbed, and then Casey shows up again, and Ralph doesn't really understand because he's supposed to be dead, and now Casey is acting crazy, so Ralph is trying to figure out how to get things back to normal before Casey kills somebody else, because he already killed somebody at the first time it's back. It's not a spoiler, it's an inciting incident. So you should be able to, it can be as sloppy or as like jovial and conversational as possible, but you should be able to tell me character, what are they doing at the start of the book? What's at risk? You can't tell me those things and instead default on, I use these extreme, very complex literary techniques to explore the themes of philosophy and worth and Nietzscheism, and be like, no. And final question is, if you were to write a book, what would it be about? Well, I've already written 6 books and have 3 short stories out and a couple of anthologies. Right now, I'm currently writing The Legend of Bill Cassidy, Book 1. It does not have an official title yet. We are kind of playing with ideas for those right now. And The Legend of Bill Cassidy, Book 1 is centralized around the eldest son, Tommy Cassidy, who falls in love with the daughter of a gun manufacturer, a very, very influential gun manufacturer. Her name is Marcella Bailey. And when she is kind of being pushed into marrying a man that she doesn't want to marry, she is given the opportunity to run away with Tommy, which brings the Pinkertons on their tail. Now, Tommy and Marcella are not one-offs because Tommy also has to handle his twin siblings. And you got the hijinks of bringing some outsiders into this very small niche group as they try to stay away from the Pinkertons and figure out how to settle things with Mr. Bailey without them all dying. Because Mr. Bailey is nothing if not a very determined man. Look, he is trying to buy up so much influence on the West Coast to kick the Mormons out of Utah, okay? The man is very driven, okay? The other story I'm working on is Predisposed to Bliss, but I'm not sharing too much on that book right now until I get through at least the first draft to better understand what it's doing. I'm about 40,000 words into that, I think, and I'm getting some ideas of it, but I know that there are going to be some major rewrites, and I'm still trying to figure out the major theme. I'll have a better idea of it once I do stuff in the third act, but I've got some random parts in the first act and some random chapters in the second act, and I can say that it was influenced by a lot of things that I have read and experienced this year in talking about book content, and some stuff from last year as well. But it was specifically inspired by a book that I read this year and has influence from some social issues and discussions and observations that I have made over these last 2 or 3 years. So I'll discuss that a little bit more in the future, but not right now. With that said, those are my 10 answers to the 10 questions for the reader profile tag. Thank you, Novel Insights, for tagging me. I will link his YouTube page down in the description below, as well as the other people that I will be tagging. Have you read any of the books that I have referenced? Will you read any of the books that I have referenced? That said, have a great weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. Be grateful for everything that you have that makes your days a blessing. I'm glad that you're here, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer.
For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die.
Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?